She texted me at 3:02 a.m. Don't wait up. No punctuation, no emoji, just that. The message blinked in the dark room while I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting how many times I'd heard her heels click out the door this month. She said it was a girl's night, but I'd seen the perfume she only wore on business trips, the one I bought her last Christmas. I didn't argue. I just read those 3 words again and thought how they sounded less like freedom and more like a dare. I closed my eyes, turned off the lamp, and made a decision I'd been avoiding for months. I got up, went to the front door, and pulled the small keypad from its slot. It wasn't hard. I'd installed the system myself. Within minutes, I'd reset the master code. I printed a note on plain paper. You said don't wait up. I didn't. I taped it right above the handle. Then I went back to bed, not to sleep, but to listen, to the silence that finally belonged to me. By 3:20 a.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. Headlights cut across the blinds, then clicked off. A pause. Keys jingled. A faint laugh, hers, followed by a man's muffled voice from somewhere near the sidewalk. The engine faded as he drove off, and she whispered something to herself, maybe rehearsing an excuse. The metal key hit the lock. A click. Another. Then nothing. I heard the handle twist, the lock rattle. She knocked lightly at first, then harder. Tom, she called, voice sharp with irritation. I didn't answer. She tried again, louder this time. It's freezing. Open up. My phone buzzed. 3 texts in a row. Why did you change the code? This isn't funny. Let me in. I lay still, staring at the dark ceiling, feeling a strange calm rise in me. The kind of calm you get after years of noise finally stop. She pounded on the door, called my name again, then silence. Through the peephole, I watched her pull out her phone, light washing her face pale and confused. She read the note. For a second, her expression softened, like she realized what it meant. Then anger. She tore the note down, crumpled it, but didn't know what to do next. She tried the key again, slammed the door with her palm, even checked if she could slip through the side gate, but I'd locked that too. Eventually, she sank to the porch steps in her sequin dress, arms wrapped around herself. The same woman who'd once said I was too predictable sat there at 3:30 a.m., waiting for a man she'd told not to wait. I looked at her one last time, then turned away. For the first time in months, I actually slept. If you've ever been through something like this, betrayed, gaslight, and then finally free, hit that subscribe button. More stories like this are coming, and trust me, they get even colder. The morning after she sat outside my door, I woke up later than usual. The air in the house felt lighter somehow, quiet in a way it hadn't been for a long time. I made coffee, poured it into my favorite mug, the one she always used even though she knew it annoyed me, and stared at the door. Her shoes weren't there, her coat wasn't hanging on the rack, and for the first time, that didn't feel wrong. Around 10, my phone buzzed again. A long string of messages came in. You're being cruel. You embarrassed me. I was just out with friends. Let's talk. I didn't reply. The part of me that used to break at her words felt gone. Maybe it had been leaving slowly over months, one lie at a time. I walked to the porch. The crumpled note still lay by the steps, damp from the dew. I picked it up, flattened it, and set it on the counter inside like a trophy of calm. Around noon, I saw her through the security camera feed. She'd come back. Hair pulled into a messy bun, sunglasses on, still in last night's clothes. She looked around like she expected me to open the door and forgive her just because she showed up. I didn't move. She typed on her phone again. I'm sorry, one message said. Another followed. Please, I just want to talk. But then, as if she couldn't help herself, the next one read, You're overreacting. That's when I realized the truth. She didn't want forgiveness. She wanted control. I muted the notifications and went on with my day. Around 3, she tried the door again, knocking louder, calling my name. I turned up the TV and let her voice fade behind the noise. Later that evening, a mutual friend called me. She's saying you locked her out, he said awkwardly. Is everything okay? I told him calmly. She texted me not to wait up. I didn't. There was a pause. Then he laughed quietly. "Damn," he said. "You finally did it." I didn't answer. I just looked out the window where her car still sat in the driveway like an abandoned confession. When the sun went down, I noticed she'd left. No goodbye, no more calls. Just gone. But that night, as I cleaned the kitchen, I found something wedged behind the fruit bowl. A small silver bracelet. Not hers. I remembered seeing it once at a dinner party on another woman's wrist. Her coworker's. The one she'd said was married. My hands shook, not from anger, but from confirmation. All the late-night texts, the vague, working late excuses, the perfume, everything finally lined up. I put the bracelet in a drawer, next to the note she'd ignored, and felt an odd kind of peace. That weekend, I changed the locks entirely. New keys, new system, new start. I moved her things into boxes and left them neatly by the garage door. No arguments, no shouting, no dramatic ending. Just quiet, measured finality. She came by once more on Sunday, banging on the door again, yelling that I had no right. But this time, I didn't even go to the peephole. I let her shout until she realized she was talking to a man who no longer existed for her. When she finally left, her footsteps echoed down the driveway like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence that had gone on too long. I stood there in the living room, lights low, the sound of the city faint outside, and for the first time I smiled. Not out of pride, not revenge, just relief. Because sometimes the quietest act of revenge is not what you do to someone, but what you stop doing for them. The next few days passed in a haze of stillness that felt both strange and liberating. There were no morning arguments, no makeup left on the sink, no half-hearted goodbyes at the door. I could hear my own thoughts again. I spent most of the time cleaning the house, not out of spite but out of necessity. Every corner seemed to carry her scent, that familiar perfume that once drew me in and later became a trigger for suspicion. I found her photos in drawers, her laughter frozen in frames that no longer meant anything. One by one, I took them down, placed them in a box, and stored it in the attic. Not burned, not destroyed, just gone from sight. People talk about heartbreak like it's an explosion, but for me it was more like erosion. Small lies, soft excuses, nights of silence chipping away until there was nothing left to break. On Wednesday, she tried again, this time from a different number. "We need to talk," the message said. "You're being childish." I stared at it for a minute, then blocked the number. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Unknown caller. I let it ring. Then a voicemail appeared, her voice trembling between anger and desperation. "Tom, you can't just shut me out like this. I made a mistake. But you're acting like I don't exist." I replayed that line in my head. Like I don't exist. Funny thing was, that's exactly how she'd made me feel for months. Forgotten in my own home, invisible at dinners, background noise in her world. I turned off the phone and stepped outside. The night air was cool, quiet, without her perfume clinging to it. I stood there, looking at the locked door, and realized I wasn't angry anymore, just done. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I'd been putting it off, but it was time. "I need to start the paperwork," I said. He asked if I was sure. "I've never been more certain." He gave me a list of what to prepare: bank records, property titles, proof of infidelity if available. Proof. The word stuck with me. I didn't have photos or videos, but I had the bracelet. I had timestamps, text messages, and the security footage of her arriving home at 3:20 a.m. with another man's voice in the background. I gathered it all. My lawyer didn't need the details, but I gave them anyway. I wanted everything out, every memory filed and stored like evidence in a case against a past version of myself. By Friday, the papers were ready. I didn't tell her. I didn't have to. She showed up again that evening, pounding on the door louder than before. "You can't do this to me," she screamed. Through the small crack of the curtains, I saw her mascara running, her voice breaking. "I just need to talk." But I remembered the nights she'd ignored me, the dinners where she'd laughed at texts from someone else while pretending it was a work joke. I remembered the nights she said she'd be home late, and how I'd stayed up anyway. And I remembered her message, "Don't wait up." So I didn't. She eventually left again, but this time she didn't just leave anger behind. She left the illusion that I still needed her. That night, I made myself a real dinner, sat at the table alone, and didn't feel lonely. I slept early and woke up rested for the first time in months. The weekend came, and I met some friends I hadn't seen in years. They asked what happened, and I told them the truth in one line. She told me not to wait, so I didn't. They laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, until they saw my face. Then one of them said quietly, "Good for you, man." And that was the thing. I didn't feel like a hero or a victim. I just felt like someone who finally chose peace over chaos. But part of me still wondered what she was telling people, what version of me she was painting now that the story wasn't hers to control anymore. I'd find out soon enough, because when someone loses power over you, they always try one last time to pull you back in. I didn't know it yet, but that final attempt was coming, and it would be louder, messier, and colder than any 3 a.m. knock could ever be. It was the following week when she finally made her move. I came home from work to find her car parked crooked in the driveway, engine still running, trunk half open. My heart didn't race the way it once would have. I just stood there for a moment, taking in the scene like a spectator at the end of a long movie. She was sitting on the porch steps, crying. Not the soft, helpless kind of crying that stirs sympathy. This was calculated, the kind meant to draw you back in. When she saw me, she jumped up, running toward me like nothing had happened. "Tom, please," she said, grabbing my arm. "Can we talk? Just 5 minutes." I stepped back. "There's nothing left to talk about." She shook her head, mascara smudging. "I made a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. I just felt lonely. You were so distant." I stopped her there. "You were lonely, so you fixed it at 3 a.m.? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I could see the lie forming before she even said it. "He was just a friend," she whispered. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "You must think I'm the dumbest man alive." She reached into her purse and pulled out her key, holding it up like proof of something. "I still live here," she said. "This is still my home." "Not anymore," I replied. "The locks changed a week ago. You remember, when you told me not to wait up." Her hand trembled as she looked at the door, realizing she no longer had a place to belong. "You can't just erase me," she said, voice cracking. "We built a life together." I looked at her, really looked, and saw a stranger. "You erased yourself the moment you thought I wouldn't notice." She stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, trying to find a weapon in her words. "You're heartless," she said finally. "You think this makes you strong, but you'll regret it." I almost smiled. I already did. For years. She turned away, muttering curses under her breath, then turned back suddenly. "You'll see what happens when people find out what you did," she said, her voice rising. "You locked your wife out in the middle of the night. Everyone will know how cruel you are." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The security camera above the door blinked its little red light, catching every word. That night, I watched the footage back, not to gloat but to remind myself that silence wasn't weakness. It was control. Over the next few days, she tried everything. Emails, mutual friends, guilt, even showing up at my office pretending to drop something off. But each time, she found the same wall of calm waiting for her. I didn't shout, didn't argue. I simply repeated the same words. "You said don't wait up." I didn't. By midweek, her tone had changed from anger to desperation. She left voicemails saying she missed me, that she couldn't sleep, that she was willing to fix everything. The irony wasn't lost on me. She wanted to fix the thing she'd broken only because she could no longer stand outside it. And yet, a small part of me, a human part, felt pity. We'd shared years together, built routines, shared jokes, and memories that once mattered. But pity isn't love, and forgiveness without change is just another lie. So when her mother called me the next day, begging me to give her another chance, I simply said, "She had one." Then I hung up. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. Saturday morning came bright and warm. I made breakfast, opened the curtains, and let the sunlight fill the house. It looked different now. Cleaner, quieter, alive in its emptiness. I stood by the window and thought about how endings rarely come with explosions. Sometimes they're just a door that doesn't open anymore. My lawyer called later to confirm the divorce papers had been served. She tried to argue, apparently, but even her signature looked tired. I thanked him and hung up. No celebration, no relief, just closure. That night, I poured a glass of whiskey, sat on the porch, and looked at the same spot where she once sat shivering at 3 a.m., knocking on a door that no longer recognized her. I thought about how simple the note had been, how final. You said don't wait up. I didn't. It wasn't revenge. It was truth, sealed behind a locked door and a quiet heart. A month later, her name still came up in conversations I didn't want to have. Friends, family, even people from her office asked what happened. I told everyone the same thing. She told me not to wait up, and I didn't. It was simple and final, and for most, that was enough. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was done proving. My lawyer called again to confirm she'd signed the final papers. Apparently, she'd cried during the meeting, said she didn't think I'd actually go through with it. I thanked him and hung up. That night, I drove to the coast, parked near the water, and watched the waves crash against the rocks. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath in that marriage. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about exhaustion, carrying the weight of a love that had turned into performance. When you live too long waiting for someone else to change, you start disappearing piece by piece. I had stopped existing in that house long before I changed the locks. As the days passed, I started to enjoy the small things again. The quiet mornings, the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of rain without tension filling the air. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. The first piece I finished was a door under a streetlight, half open, with no one standing outside. It wasn't meant to be symbolic, but it was. One evening, I got an email from her. The subject line just said, "Read this, please." Against my better judgment, I opened it. She wrote that she'd been seeing a therapist, that she realized how deeply she'd hurt me, and that she wanted to meet for closure. She promised it wasn't about getting back together. I sat there staring at the message for a long time. The truth is, I didn't need closure. I'd already had it, on the night she found her key no longer fit. Still, I agreed to meet her, not out of hope but out of curiosity. We met at a small cafe downtown, a place we used to go when things were still good. She looked smaller somehow, quieter. "You look better," she said softly. I nodded. "You don't." It wasn't meant as cruelty, just honesty. She sighed and started talking about guilt, about confusion, about how she didn't know why she threw everything away. I listened without interrupting. When she finally asked, "Was there ever a moment you wanted to forgive me?" I said, "There was a moment I wanted to, but it passed when I realized you weren't sorry. You were scared of losing control." She looked down, tears pooling, but I didn't feel the old ache anymore. It was just a story now, one I'd already finished reading. She reached across the table and whispered, "Do you ever miss me?" I smiled faintly. "I miss who I thought you were, but that person doesn't exist." She nodded slowly, wiped her eyes and said, "I deserved that." We left the cafe without another word. She turned right at the corner, and I never saw her again. Months went by. My life rebuilt itself piece by piece. I moved into a new place, smaller but brighter, with no shadows of the past in it. Sometimes, when I saw couples arguing in the street or a phone lighting up on a dinner table, I'd think about that night, the sound of her key turning and failing, the silence that followed, and how peace entered my life not with forgiveness, but with finality. That's when I realized revenge doesn't always come from anger. Sometimes it's born from clarity, from choosing to stop waiting for someone who already left you long before they packed their bags. I still keep the note I wrote that night in a drawer. It reminds me of the moment I stopped being the man who waited and became the man who walked away. She texted, "Don't wait up," and I didn't. If you've ever had to choose silence over chaos, peace over pleading, you know what that means. Subscribe for more stories like this, real endings, quiet revenge, and the kind of closure you don't have to ask for.